Well, hello and welcome to Origami Snowman. My name's Matt, and I'm gonna talk about some stuff that I like. Today we're gonna talk about one of my all-time favorite bands, Rancid. If you don't know Rancid, they are arguably one of the most popular punk rock bands ever. So, I said arguably. You can argue it. That's fine. They. Oh, hello. How are you? So, way back in the 80s, there was this band, a ska band out in California called Operation Ivy. You may have heard of them. You may have not. It's fine. Whatever. I'm not going to judge you guys. I'm not a gatekeeper. So, Operation Ivy, these three fellas, you go ahead and roast me for not knowing all of them. I believe it was Matt Freeman and Tim Armstrong and another guy. And so they were just this rinky-dink, real gritty, real dirty ska band. Not ska like not like Real Big Fish or, whoever. They didn't have like a brass section. It was just the three of them. And mostly it was like punk rock, but with like like some of the ska tropes, the pick it up, and the you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, and if you don't, check them out. They're pretty good. So they were really good, actually, and they became really popular. In fact, they became. Oh, it's raining here, by the way. So if you hear, rain sounds, that's because it's raining here. So they grew too big too fast, faster than they were anticipating, bigger than they wanted to get. Now, they weren't like, oh no, we have to stay true to the music. No, like it was a lot of pressure, and Tim Armstrong couldn't quite cope with it. Like he didn't know what to do with that pressure, and it ended up causing him to develop a pretty severe drinking problem. And they made the call that like this isn't what we want, and so they pulled the plug. And in the following years, people didn't forget about Operation Ivy. They still loved Operation Ivy, but Tim and Matt, they needed to like kind of take care of themselves, and they knew that, and they didn't want to be some tragic rock story, So they stepped away from the music scene for a while, or rather, they stepped out of the spotlight. Tim dealt with his alcoholism. He was homeless for a while. He just really, he lived rough. And he never stopped loving music. He never stopped wanting to play music. He just didn't want the music to like get the best of him. And so they kind of took it slow. And by slow, they just kept starting bands. They just kept starting new bands, right? Like obsessively. And they'd start a band, they'd play with a couple of guys, and then they move on. And then finally, oh my goodness, that was a really good shot. Even though it lipped out, that's fine. They started this band, four-piece, just straight up dirty, grimy punk rock, and called themselves Rancid. And their first album, I don't even know how to describe it as clearly they had experience writing music, but this album, it's you gotta hear it. It's so good. One of the singles off of that is a song called Hyena. And Hyena is such an amazing song. It's really, it's a really incredible track. Actually, most of the tracks on that album are incredible. Adina, Rats in the Hallway, like it's such a snapshot image of, life among the unloved and the unwashed. It's a very Toulouse-Lautrec kind of view of the world, junkies and prostitutes and, kids, wayward kids and, just trying to find your way in a world that doesn't want you. It's really the heart of punk rock. And they immediately like took off. Now, this was the problem with Operation Ivy. Ooh, that was close. Operation Ivy. However, they were prepared for it this time. They didn't let it overwhelm them. They set boundaries and they did this on their own terms, and they were able to like kind of hang together. And they looked out for each other and they watched each other's backs. And that time they had spent, after Operation Ivy, all that time finding themselves and playing with different people, and they created a community, and they had, it wasn't just the four of them. It was the it was the entire community that they had built. So they had friends who had their back. They had Offspring, which not ever really one of my favorite bands or even one I liked, but like they had No Effects, and they had Bad Religion. They had all these other guys who were like, yeah, we live in this world too. We're singing about the same things. We're fans of each other's music, but more importantly, we're fans of each other. We want each other to do well, to survive, and to be complete people before they are musicians. They didn't want another collapse like they had seen before. And I'm convinced that it was this community that kept Rancid from falling apart the way Operation Ivy did. And so they went on to, make some of the absolute best albums. And people can argue that, Rancid's not really punk rock. It's rock and roll. It's not punk rock. It's too calculated and it's too like talented, to be punk rock. But whatever, we don't gatekeep. Punk rock is punk rock. If some people say that No Doubt is punk rock, that's fine. No Doubt can be punk rock. I'm Just a Girl. Sure, why not? And nobody else gets to say it's not. Sorry. That's kind of the It's kind of the beauty of punk rock is, if a bunch of Amish kids want to make their own instruments and, write music about, baling hay and call it punk rock, it's punk rock, baby. The beauty of punk rock is it's saying, hey, life is hard. Life is hard in a lot of different ways, but we want to make sure that you have the support you need to get through it. That's at its core, that's kind of what punk rock is. And who needs to hear that message? The kids who don't have support. And the kids who don't have support are often the quirky ones, the weird ones, the unwashed, the kids who have a weird idea and shove a safety pin through their nose, or, color their shoes, or, make their own pants, or just, they don't look cool, but they know who they are. Those are the kids who don't often have a support system. And that's why I think punk rock is so important. And the story of Rancid, it backs that up. It says, listen, we are a support system, and we also have amazing music. So let's talk about Rancid. Some of my favorite Rancid songs. Now, I just did a little Google search, just to kind of see what other people think are the best Rancid songs. Now, the irony of that is none of those lists were the same. Some of these lists were like, oh, they took all of their songs, with maybe two exceptions, off of and Out Come the Wolves, the third album, Rancid's third album, and Out Come the Wolves, one of the greatest albums of all time, definitely in my top 5. Some of the lists were, like they tried to mix it up and take songs from a lot of different albums, and there were some songs that were prevalent on every list, and some that I was like, wait, really, that one? And but the beauty of punk rock is we are all gonna find beauty in something else. It's like walking through an art museum. You might look at a painting and see nothing. Just be like, whatever, who cares? And I might see that same painting and have my heart absolutely broken. So That's the thing. That's the thing about, punk rock. We are all going to find something different. Man, this is not going to be an easy hole. We're all going to find something different to appreciate, no matter where you're looking. Oh, I thought I was going to have it. Oh, no, don't. No. Oh, great. Oh my, okay. Sorry. So I want to talk about my favorite Rancid songs. I mentioned Hyena off of their first album. Absolutely amazing song. Get Out of My Way, I think, is the last song on that album, and it's a cover by a band, and I want to say it's the Undertones that originally wrote it. And if you listen to the original, it is a corny, hokey song, and I love the fact that Rancid, somebody, I don't know if it was Freeman or if it wasn't Lars, he wasn't with the band at the time, or if it was Tim, whomever. I love the idea of them listening to this song and being like, we could do it better, like. But that's a really fun song. Their second album, Let's Go. I think Let's Go is an awesome song. A lot of people. Hang on, was Salvation? I can't remember if Salvation was off their first or second album. I think it was off their first album. I didn't care for Salvation as much as some people did. Just didn't do anything for me. But that one is a real popular song. But off of Let's Go, my absolute favorite Rancid song is Radio. And Radio came out, it was originally on a single that came out shortly, like it came out in 93, shortly before their second album. Now, I'm going to say this. I want to be, full disclosure, that's not information anyone needs in their head. That is not something that I knew just, from living life. I had to do a lot of research for my last novel, Secretly Kings, Matt Beers, available on Amazon, because I talk extensively about punk rock in that book. And so I wanted to make sure I was getting dates right, and I didn't want any, oh, hey, that didn't come out for 6 months after your story, that whole thing. And so I learned that Radio, which came out on Let's Go came out in 1994, I think June or July, but that song Radio came out in 93 on a single. So that being said, that's not information that people should have in their brains unless you're researching a novel. That's all I'm saying. That's the only reason I know that. So Radio is my favorite Rancid song. That's off of Let's Go. Their third album, like I said, I'm sure there's other stuff on Let's Go. I'm trying to move through this real quick. I'm enjoying the rain, and it's just a nice day, and I'm chatty. Okay, let's keep talking. Their third album, And Out Come the Wolves, is one of the most perfect albums I'm aware of. I can listen to that from beginning to end, no skips. It's a great album. I can listen to it over and over. Never get tired of it. But on that album, Olympia, Washington is a great song. Real popular ones, Ruby Soho, Time Bomb. Those are two that if you've heard Rancid, you've heard those songs. Those were singles that were real popular back in 96 or 95 or whenever. And Alleyways and Avenues is great. This whole album is great. It's very nostalgic, even though like I can't relate to a lot of what they sing about. But there is this sense that someone is feeling nostalgia, and that's enough for me. It's pretty politically charged, and it's a great song. Old Friend, that song is so good. Pardon me. I think Rancid's Out Come the Wolves is an excellent album, and if you're interested in hearing them, that is a wonderful place to start. The opening track, Maxwell Murder, the bass line in that song is so much better than any punk band has a right to expect from their bass player. It's crazy good. So check it out. let's see. I want to talk about Life Won't Wait because that was, I want to say, their fourth album. It was, I remember being real excited about it and then being just a little let down. You cannot come away from And Out Come the Wolves and not be disappointed in the follow up because it's just, it's like hitting a grand slam. Every other thing you do out there on the field is just sort of less impressive. But Life Won't Wait has a lot of love from the community, and I'm not gonna badmouth it, but The Wolf is a pretty good song. Who Would Have Thought is a pretty good song. There's plenty to enjoy. It's kind of ska heavy, so they're kind of getting back to their Operation Ivy roots, but still pretty good. Other notable songs, I really liked Indestructible. That whole album, there's some really good tracks on there. So the title track Indestructible is great. Fall Back Down is great. Red Hot Moon is great. I'm trying to remember, is Spirit of 87. I think Spirit of 87 is on that album. Spirit of 87 is a great song. It's a great song. It gets overlooked a lot. Actually, I have that album currently in the CD player in my bus. And so when there are no kids on, I will turn it up real loud and hope that people sitting in traffic can't hear through my windows. But that's fine. Oh my goodness! But they write really good, really catchy songs. There's one album that a lot of people did not care for called "Let the Dominoes Fall," and there's some great songs on there. I think "You Want It, You Got It" is just it's a very anthemic song. East Bay Night. Oh my gosh, East Bay Night is the opening track, not the title track. It's the opening track on that album, and it's super good. Tim Armstrong ended up doing a bunch of acoustic covers of his own music, and that's one of them he did. And it's like he's got a throat full of gravel, that guy. But my goodness, he makes some beautiful music. He actually co-wrote a song with Pink, and I wish I could remember what it was. I don't remember. But they won a Grammy for it. So that's that kind of like that community that we talked about earlier, where he just like they support each other, even if it's like poppy music, even if it's Pink, who is awesome. She makes some incredible music, but not usually someone that you'd think of as like crossing streams with like the punk rock community. Although I don't know though, Pink, she's pretty punk. She's got the right attitude for sure. I don't know. Let's move on. Let's talk about Rancid. They have this tendency to release self-titled albums, and so you don't really know how to refer to them. But there's a couple of CDs, a couple of albums. CDs. I'm 100 years old. There are a couple of albums that definitely are worth your time. But again, if you've never heard Rancid and you're at all influenced by the passion that I feel, check out their third album, And Out Come the Wolves. Iconic cover. Everything about it is iconic. You listen to anybody talk about that album, and they'll say, yeah, you can't go wrong with that album. It's incredible. There's just some amazing talent on it. So, like, people will argue that punk rock started with the Sex Pistols in London. Some people will say, no, they started with the Ramones. Some people say they started with Iggy Pop. Punk rock didn't really start anywhere. It was a lot of people with the same idea that music was getting too elitist. It was getting If you couldn't spend, $200 on a guitar and $500 on an amp setup, then you didn't have the right to play. you know and if you couldn't prove your worth by playing like a 9-minute guitar solo in the middle of a song, then you weren't a real musician. Then you didn't, what you had to say wasn't valid, and you don't get to have a platform. There were a lot of people who felt like, no, Eric Clapton, say what you will, great musician, but he doesn't speak for me. He's not singing about the things that are important to me. And so they decided, I want to sing about my stuff, and some people just, they didn't have a lead in, they didn't have a thing they wanted to talk about. They just had an emotion that they felt and they wanted to get it out. So you had bands like the Ramones who were singing about living in New York City and all the things they did, sniffing glue and going out and trying to score heroin, and like watching their girlfriend get beat up, like they sang songs about the things they dealt with daily, that things that weren't pretty, things that weren't nice, but things that were real and in their life. And then you had the Sex Pistols, who sang about, like, kind of the opposite, about not the opposite, but like, instead of "this is the way my life is," they're singing about "this is what's wrong with the world and you're the problem, and you screwed things up for all of us and we hate you and we're angry." Instead of saying "this is my life," shrug, they said, "why are things so bad?" And that really upset a lot of people. And you listen to the Ramones and it's very poppy and very catchy, but very simple. But also, if you listen to the lyrics, it's like, oh, that's disturbing. you know. But if you listen to the Sex Pistols, it's immediately clear that they are trying to rile someone up. They are, they are trying to get some attention, whether negative attention, positive attention, whatever. And they also had they had a stylist real early on. And it was Malcolm McLaren who was trying to, like, kind of start a new fashion, a new style, and then he was gonna sell it in his clothing stores, clothing shops, and he did great with that. It's so funny to think of, like, punk rock as like, these are a bunch of kids who can't sing, can't play instruments, but they had art directors. The Ramones had Arturo Vega, who designed their famous presidential seal, like, the shirts that you see everybody wear. If you've seen a Ramones T-shirt, you've probably seen the presidential seal. The eagle holding the guitar and the drumsticks, and very, very, very cool shirt. I had one and I grew out of it because I'm a big fat man. But as gritty and dirty as punk rock claimed to be, it was all very much about style. And so you look at grunge, Nirvana, and they're wearing just jeans and flannels, and you think, well, that's not punk. That's not punk at all. Like, they look like country singers with long hair, But we call it grunge, but really Nirvana was very punk rock. Everything about them, their sound, their attitude, it was very punk rock. The only thing that they missed, the only box they didn't check, was that style. And so, you can argue that punk rock is a style, punk rock is a sound, punk rock is an attitude. But again, it's really about the community, and it's upsetting and sad that, like, so few people really understand the beautiful parts of punk rock, and that is the camaraderie in the community. When you see a bunch of punks, you see a bunch of them, and they all have each other's backs, and that is beautiful. You don't see that a lot in too many places these days. Groups of people who are happy to exist together. with no expectations and no requirements. They just we want you to feel loved, welcome. And I love that. I love that so much. And it's funny to me that somebody took rock and roll, which was becoming very elitist, and they said, we want to start something that doesn't exclude anyone except for those who would exclude others. They excluded the people who were trying to make life less welcoming. So it reminds me, it's kind of there's an episode of The Office where it's Diversity Day, and they're walking into the conference room, and Toby looks and he sees that they don't there are no chairs, and he says, "Are we gonna all sit Indian style?" And Michael says, "This is an environment of inclusion and of welcoming, so you can just get out." And to a certain extent, that's kind of what punk rock did. They said, "Listen, we love everybody, and doesn't matter, if you're black or if you're white, if you're rich or you're poor, if you're gay or you're straight. It doesn't matter. We love everybody. So if you don't like it, you can leave." And you know what? That's fine. That's the kind of intolerance I can get behind. Anyway, trying to wrap this up without making it sound like I'm trying to wrap it up. You know how good I am at that. But I do love punk rock. As I've gotten older, I've discovered that my tastes have changed. I really used to not like Bad Religion and the Misfits, and which not even close to the same sound. Very different types of bands. But as I was researching my novel, I found myself really loving both of those bands. Like really getting, oh, look at that hole in one, we can end the video. So yes, check out Rancid, check out Bad Religion, check out the Misfits. My goodness, there's so many great bands. Stiff Little Fingers, Fugazi, just so many great sounds, so just, yeah, get out. Oh my, get out there and check them out and listen to them and love them, because I love you guys and I want you to feel included and welcome and all that good stuff. So I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.